I got a treat for you today. I'm going to show you a magic trick. Pennies from heaven. Today, I am going to take... That's bad lighting. Let's try this. I am going to take 250 years from Mother Nature and compress that down into a weekend. And I'll show you how. Okay, so maybe it's going to take just a little bit longer than a weekend. I'm not sure if I showed this during my fence video, but I have a lot of junk against the fence here. You might notice, well, I have that junk too, but I'm working on that. I'm cleaning that up. But I have stuff like this giant pile. I've got that log, which I was trying. I'm sure you guys remember this. This was the log that killed my chainsaw. I'm still working on that one. I have that pile of logs right here. I have that just needs to get cleaned up. I'm working on it, guys. I got a lot of projects around here. I'm telling you, the projects never end. Here's another one of those huge piles. This one's really big. Let me see if I can get something for reference for you. So there you go. You might be able to see that right there. That rake is about 6 feet if you lay it flat, or stand it flat up on the ground. And so that gives you an idea of how big that pile is, and it just stretches way over here to way over there. So you might notice this pile right here, as big as it is, this is the second of 4 piles. It's probably, I would say, the bigger of all the piles, but there were 4. There was another pile over here, which I'm slowly disappearing. You might notice all along here, it's all stretched out, all spread, and half of it actually has already been covered up over here. When I first moved here, all of the trees along my property were just littered with kudzu. So what I did throughout the summer was pull all that kudzu up, pull it off the trees, pull it out of the ground. It was a lot of work. I didn't want to just throw it in a trailer and pay to have it hauled away. That was perfectly good biomass. So what I did was I piled it high like this, but I piled it very airy. So what I mean by airy is I didn't want to pack it down really hard, because if I did that, it might, when all the leaves, the kudzu leaves, started to compost, and whatever other leaves happened to fall on it and those started to compost, it would start to create soil there. And if it was packed tight enough, the nodes on those kudzu plants might actually re-root. So what I did instead was I piled it as high as I could, but I left it kind of fluffy, right? I didn't pack it down. So all of the nodes were sitting in open air. And then I just let that Carolina heat cook them. So those are basically dead, with the exception of, I'm sure in the center of that pile it's still pretty damp, but I'm hoping in the center of the pile, if it was that damp, it means it probably got really hot from composting itself. So now, the plan is to take this giant pile, spread it as thin as I can, and then just smear some wood chips over the whole thing. Just kind of paint the wood chips over it. So underneath it might be kind of ugly, but it's all biomass. It's all just woody material that's going to break down over time. The insects, the microbes, the worms, anything that's going to get to it is going to get to it. I've lost probably about a good 12 or more, maybe 18 inches of soil from around these trees, just from the erosion and the rain from when all of this property was cleared. And so I'm just trying to put that back, and that's exactly what I'm going to do right now.
Ba ba da ba
So I've been spending a good part of my day today flattening this pile out. This was the big pile you saw next to those rocks. And you see now, it's not this big heaping mound anymore. Now we're flattening this out as much as we can, filling in this whole area which was low because of erosion. Here, I'll actually show you. Here's a good example of it. You can see that mound of dirt there. That's where the original soil line was, and you can see how much it's kind of fallen off. I'll show you some over here too. You can see where the soil line was here and how it kind of came across like this, but now we're a good foot or 2 feet below that. So we've lost all the topsoil. You can see, tripping over here. You can see how this is a much richer, darker, and it has a lot of fine roots in it. Whereas if you were to dig here, we have a lot of leaves now, but just under those leaves you can see it's already mud, clay, soil. And those leaves just dropped this fall, which is why there's nothing there now. But all of this is going to contribute to nice fungally dominated soil for these mature trees that I have along the fence here. Actually, I want to show you something. Look at that right there. Now I'm disturbing this, so obviously this is probably going to die here, but there's a lot of that starting to show signs of decomposition already. It's interesting because the white balance on the camera doesn't show it, but this is all actually very dark in color. You can see how light this is and how dark these are. These were sitting deeper under the pile and they started composting. So it's already working, and I haven't even laid down the wood chips. This was purely just piling up this kudzu and just letting it cook over the summer. And there were some logs in here too. And you can see the fungus. There's a fungus among us, fellas. We're getting there. Okay, it's a new day. I apologize if I'm breathing a little heavy or sniffling. Again, it's a little cold today, and I'm working hard. I did not bring you along for the morning routine because it was really just more of the same, but you get a good idea of what the before looked like, and now you can see what the after is looking like. Just a nice, smooth layer of wood chips, and that's going to get smoother and smoother over time as things start to break down. And you know, I kind of rake through it, maybe pick out some of the sticks and move some of those sticks over to another area that might need to be mulched over later in the season. But overall, I say we're doing pretty good. Whew. All right, so I'm just gonna take a quick break here and talk to you guys. I'm just hustling here right now, moving these wood chips to the spot. I tell you, it is times like these, I really wish I had a tractor. And maybe the whole, should I get a tractor? Maybe that'll be a whole separate YouTube video on its own. But I will say for sure, I could have used one on this project. There's still a lot to do, and it's pretty back-breaking work. So what I really wanted to talk to you guys about was this approach that I'm doing right now. Basically, you know, as I was doing it, I didn't really have a name for what I was doing, because really it's, let's keep it real. I'm taking all of the organic trash that's in my yard, branches that have fallen from the trees, things that have just dried up, stuff that's been here from when the property was built and the landscapers just kind of dumped it to the side. I've had trees from the other side of this fence die and fall over, and I've had to chop those up. I don't have a fire pit here. I don't have a wood burning stove. I don't have any way to dispose of that material, and I'm not sure that I'd want to, because it's just, a lot of this stuff is riddled with termites, or it's just covered in fungi and all kinds of stuff, and I'm not sure that that's really something I would take into the house and burn it in a wood stove. That just doesn't seem safe to me. I don't know. I've never owned a wood stove before, don't have one now. That just wasn't an option for me. But again, as I was going through this process that I'm going through right now, I think in a lot of ways what this feels like is a reverse hugelkultur, right? Because if you think about a hugelkultur, what is it? It's, you usually start with the big stuff down at the bottom. You put your logs down there, and then you cover it with sticks, and then you cover it with leaves, and then you cover that with grass, and then you cover that with soil, and you start with the coarsest material down at the bottom, and you just get finer and finer and finer until at the very top it's basically just some topsoil and maybe compost or something to help sort of inoculate that whole mound. Here I'm really doing it kind of backwards. It's a bit of a reverse hugelkultur in the sense that I have my base soil that I'm on, which really is just subsoil. On top of that, I'm laying down a lot of my finer woody vine material, small branches, dead kudzu, anything that's, you know, really small. I'm talking about ½ inch or less diameter, just viney trash material. On top of that, to help weigh it down and mat it down a little bit, I'm putting sort of medium-sized logs, the stuff you would see that's maybe 4 inches, or maybe logs larger, like 8-inch logs that were sort of cut in half or split, and I'm sort of laying those down on top of that. On top of that, I'm laying a thick bed of mulch, of these wood chips that I'm getting. The reason why I'm doing it sort of reversed, first of all, it's all organic material. It's all going to break down. I'm in no rush. Really, ultimately, what I'm trying to do is return the soil back to what it was before I got here. The problem with doing it in a pure hugelkultur sense, at least what you would find on YouTube or Pinterest or whatever, is that I don't necessarily want to grow anything here. And a lot of this viney material that I'm sort of spreading out, because it was a vine, I'm talking whether it was kudzu, or I have a lot of wild rose vines, or a lot of muscadine vines are kind of growing all around me in this area. Anything that really seems sort of native to the area is growing all around me, and I've sort of cut back a lot of that, let it die in those piles like I talked about before, but it's still a vine. You try to mat that stuff down and you just have loops all over the place. It's like trying to untangle Christmas lights. So instead of trying to deal with that tangled mess and trying to get it all to mat down, I just put something heavy on it. Because when you walk on it, it mats down, but you step off of it and it just springs right back up again. So I put those slightly larger logs. It's just enough weight just to kind of hold it down, hold it in place. Once everything is held down in place, I can come back over this and just paint a nice thick smooth layer of wood chips, and everything's going to break down on its own just fine. Keep in mind, this whole area that I'm mulching is underneath very mature large trees. These trees are 20 plus inch diameter trees. I have a handful of them here. Some are pine, some are oak, some are maple. There's, I think, some wild cherry in this little area here, and that's just on this side of the fence. I have a whole row of very mature pine trees on the roadside of the fence there, that they also blow their leaves over here as well, all the needles, I should say. So this whole area is getting a nice thick mat of wood chips, but then next fall it's going to get a nice even layer over top of it of pine needles and oak leaves and maple leaves, and all of that is going to provide even more nutrition for the soil, and the wood chips are going to help hold all of it in place. I guess you could call this a suburban permaculture. Right here, I'm doing my very best to try to keep the soil in place, to re-nourish the soil, to bring back a lot of those nutrients so that I can then start to use them on myself to grow food, or just keep a natural habitat all around me. With that, I'm going to get back to work, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Para